Hey, it's Flannel Boy. Let's continue with this list. Number 85, Talking Heads. Another one of those 80s bands that was extremely influential despite being kind of atonal most of the time. Of all the songs they have, I'm probably most into Once in a Lifetime musically, but I like the fact that they had all the African rhythms and stuff in it, like Peter Gabriel. I like the fact that that was big in the 80s, partially because people in the 80s had such superficial, lame stuff, but they could expand and do world music, and that's part of the Talking Heads' appeal for me. Of course, they get no points for vocals, but what do you expect? Half of these other people on this list can't sing either, so Talking Heads. Number 84, The Stone Roses. For every movement in alternative rock, there's something that was kind of throttled in the cradle, so to speak. Something that never got big and kind of ended before it began, before the whole movement began, but was still influential in the early scene. I mean, for grunge they had Mother Love Bone, and for gothic rock they had Joy Division. So for Britpop they had a few, and one of these was the Stone Roses, which were big around 1990, 1989, and they had this type of shoegazing effect on a lot of their work, very spatial and open, and that was totally Brit in the 80s, by the way. That's totally what they did, total ecstasy club music, only without the instant beat that you see in too much club music. But besides that, I really love the song Waterfall. I like the hypnotic riff they got going with it, and I like some of their other stuff too. It's very British, and it's very influential on Britpop. Number 83, Jet. I got into Jet when they were big, obviously, in the mid-2000s, and especially the two songs I listened to a lot were Are You Gonna Be My Girl, which really, really stupid lyrics, but it's got that riff that really that most post-punk revival bands would shy away from. They really got the dirty sound down, but they can also do some soft and easy songs. Like Look What You've Done is a total Beatles-ish McCartney type thing. Just Australian, by the way. Just thought I'd bring that up. But Timothy actually kind of really weirded me out for a bit, but then I listened to it a few more times, and they get deep as well as rocking hard. They're kind of dichotomized into those two categories, but I love their debut record, and I really love the dirty rockers of the post-punk revival. Number 82, Linkin Park. The one new metal band that my mother likes, and she hates the rest of them, but they put a lot of thought into what they do, and there's a reason they have topped the alternative charts so many times, because they really have, they've got the beat, they put the raps in exactly the right places, they've got all the counter melodies. I especially thought, my mom always told me she loved how in Numb they would do that under melody going, you caught me on your toe. And this is an example of it gone right, of a great fusion of rock and rap, and so that's Linkin Park. Number 81, The Eels. Now I got into the Eels because they were on both the Shrek and the Shrek 2 soundtracks, and they would play these, they had this instrument they would use that kind of evoked lullaby-ish music, and it's the thing you'd hear at the beginning of Novocaine for the Soul, and it definitely worked on that second, the Shrek 2 song, I Need Some Sleep. I don't know why that song never got a single release and wasn't on anything but that soundtrack, but that song is really, really sad, and of course, you know I love sad music, so that's the Eels for you. Number 80, Television. You know when I said that Jam was the first band on this list? It could go either way, to the Talking Heads or to Television, because Television, with their record Marquee Moon, really cemented what post-punk was if Wire hadn't done it before. How Wire just did 2-minute songs. Television could do a 10-minute song and still call themselves some type of punk, which is kind of weird. Some people put them in the new wave category. I never do. My favorite song, of course, is Days from their second record. Just because that riff is really nice. Again, Tom Verlaine, not the best singer, but the fact that he took his name from some famous poet is a weird type of intellectual thing inserting into the into the punk and post-punk movement of the late 70s. So that's kind of a weird contrast, and again, they're more of an underground influence, but I really think they've got a cool sound. Number 79. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Nick Cave had the gothic down, but he kind of left that to be a more general post-punk in the middle of the 80s, and he kept going. I've heard him on a lot of soundtracks. He's got kind of a Tom Waits thing, what with his voice being weird, not growly, but I mean, if you ever listen to his old band sing Release the Bats, he really doesn't care how he sounds that much. But Nick Cave he did that song that I talked about in that Harry Potter soundtrack. He did one for Shrek 2 again. I listened to both those soundtracks when I was a kid, and I do remember in the 90s he got kind of more piano based. He did a song with PJ Harvey. That's where I see him going to kind of a Tom Waits zone. But he can do a dark songwriting and not just a dark production. Number 78, the Pixies. Another Boston band. Unlike Stained, they got the whine, although really Morphe didn't have the whiny Boston thing. But anyway, the Pixies, if they have one legacy, it's that they created the alternative build. Kurt Cobain said a lot that whenever he tried to make a loud, soft, dynamic thing, that was a Pixies song. And I'm going to credit them with that invention, which really makes the greatest songs what they are, the greatest songs. Now, if the Pixies themselves, the one that sticks out the most to me is clearly Where Is My Mind. That's the most famous of the Pixies songs, and it's at the end of Fight Club, and it's really famous. I think they also kind of have the lyrics that are just kind of teenage dullness. It's a weird combo, but that's the Pixies for you. Number 77, Pulp. Of the Britpop bands, this was the one that sounded most like 80s dance club music, especially their biggest hit, Common People. And their second record, not anywhere near their second record, actually, they've been around since the 70s, and they hadn't scored a hit until 1993 or something. But the record after their big thing, Different Class, was apparently one of the biggest flops. This Is Hardcore, one of the biggest flops, even amongst Oasis's big one of the previous year. But for a brief shining moment in time, they really got down both the extreme Britishness of Britpop and the electronic fun pop type thing. And that song Common People is really a classic for me because it's a story song, and Jarvis Cocker does great lyrics if he does, kind of grabby popish melodies. So that's what Pulp is good for. Number 76, Neutral Milk Hotel. I got into this band because in a week I'm going to be going to one of their concerts, or at least one of Jeff Mangum's concerts. And of the 90s indie bands, indie's a weird word, but he's a nice songwriter. Of course, it's kind of a lo-fi man and guitar only thing, but it works for the type of melodies he's doing. At least I like the songwriting better than Bon Iver. and especially that song, In the Air Playing Over the Sea, it sounds like a traditional song. It sounds like a traditional folk song. But some of the instrumentation can get, especially on his first album on Avery Island, can get a bit more out there. So the production gets a bit more complicated than that. Number 75, Muse. I wasn't too into Muse among the post-Britpop scene because A, Coldplay owned everything, and B, Matt Bellamy sounds like a girl. Not really into his voice. But then I heard Feeling Good, and I figured out that all the complicated type, even classical sometimes, melodies, they put a lot of time into those, and definitely the synth instrumentation, the weird type of, they're kind of between Radiohead and Coldplay. They have the high vocalist, and they're not quite as crazy as Radiohead, but they're definitely more complicated than Coldplay ever was, and Feeling Good is absolutely my jam for this band because they've got the dirty jazzy type thing down, and they're swinging it, and the keyboard is absolutely perfect, so they can songwrite. 74, Dinosaur Jr. These go along with the Pixies a lot, and I can see where people get that. Dinosaur Jr. is another big influence of the grunge scene. I played Rock Band 2 or whatever. I played Feel the Pain, and that song kind of caught my interest because it's multi-sectional, and it kind of goes easy, and it has the contrast, which kind of the Pixies had them too. I guess the reason that they're higher than the Pixies and they're this high on the list is because I think their songwriting is a lot more complicated than the Pixies, and that their aesthetic, they got the aesthetic of college rock or whatever. It's kind of a harder type of college rock down completely. 73, Sublime. You're only gonna see so much reggae stuff. Apparently, according to my mom, I liked reggae when I was very, very young. But Sublime has the type of lyricism that you'd expect of alternative bands, combined with some of that ska instrumentation. The songs can range from that song Date Rape, which I will admit is kind of insensitive because it's having a laugh at this rapist going to jail and getting raped himself. That's kind of sick. And but then there's songs that are more serious, like that song about the LA riots. And of course their biggest song that I love is Doin' Time, where they kind of borrowed the melody, and the beat works. It's kind of a hip-hop-ish thing. It's a great fusion of styles, and that's why I like Sublime, and I'm kind of sad that they kind of ended earlier than they could have gone. 72, Helmet. People call these guys the originators of alternative metal. Before any of that new metal stuff, these guys had the driving guitars and kind of the alternative songwriting. And I can see that. I can see that with a lot of Helmet songs. It's not very gripping for me, because I like a lot of alternative metal that came after it, and some of the melodies just don't grab me, and metal in general is not. But all of the metal bands, they definitely grip me more than some non-alternative metal bands. Even the Big Four. I don't like the Big Four as much as I like Helmet. So they got some of the hooks, and they invented hook plus metal equals a great time. And 71, Death Cab for Cutie. This one's the one my mom got me into. And definitely, I Will Follow You Into the Dark is one of the saddest songs I've ever heard, and you know how I am with sad music, so. They also invented the indie rock accent, if you will, that the Decemberists kind of took over with Ben Gibbard kind of getting the whine down, but I don't mind whining voices. If I minded whining voices, I wouldn't put half of these people on the list. But definitely, Death Cab has a bunch of hits that are, again, well written and sound like Neutral Milk Hotel, kind of like they're more traditional than they actually are. It's kind of a 2000s, 2010s thing to try to sound like an old folk song, even though it's not. See you in a few weeks with the next 15.